The mansion stood like a quiet monument on the hills of Charleston, South Carolina. With its white pillars, glass balconies, and perfectly trimmed gardens, the world believed everything inside was flawless. But behind the marble walls and antique chandeliers lived a silence so deep it echoed with sorrow. Lena Whitmore, daughter of billionaire industrialist Charles Whitmore, had once been the light of that mansion. She was born into unimaginable wealth, but she had never let it make her arrogant. With long chestnut hair, curious green eyes, and a laugh that could melt even her father's stern face, Lena was the darling of society, the valedictorian of her private school, and the future CEO of Whitmore Enterprises, until the accident. It was a rainy Friday night when her car skidded off the road and tumbled down a wooded slope. The rescue team found her conscious but unable to move. She had suffered a severe spinal injury. The diagnosis was cruel: permanent paralysis from the neck down. Charles Whitmore broke down in public for the first time. Doctors, therapists, and specialists from around the world were flown in, but after 6 months, all they could offer was comfort. Lena would never walk again. She would never dance, play the piano, or even hug her father. Lena, once lively and sharp, became silent. She refused visitors, stopped speaking during therapy, and insisted that the large mirror in her room be taken away. Her mother, who had passed away from cancer years ago, had always been her emotional support. Now, even her father, no matter how much he tried, couldn't reach her. Nurses came and went, therapists sighed with defeat, and the estate began to feel like a hospital rather than a home. And then came Ruth. Ruth Daniels was not a nurse. She had no medical degree, no high society charm, and no fancy references. She was a black maid in her early 40s, born and raised in the rough parts of Savannah, Georgia. She had answered an ad for a discreet, patient, compassionate caretaker. For a mansion in Charleston, she had expected an elderly woman or perhaps a lonely widow. What she found was a stone-faced billionaire, a team of silent staff, and a young girl in a motorized wheelchair who wouldn't meet her eyes. Ruth was given a room in the staff quarters and basic instructions: clean Lena's room,
All the nurses,
if they needed support, and stay out of Mr. Whitmore's way. But Ruth noticed things others ignored. The way Lena's eyes darted to the window, but never stayed there. The untouched books on the shelves, the dry, untouched paintbrushes near the corner easel, the classical music that would sometimes play faintly in her room, only for a few seconds before being turned off one morning. Ruth wheeled Lena into the garden for fresh air. Lena didn't speak or acknowledge her, but Ruth spoke anyway. "You like roses, Miss Lena?" she asked gently, touching a blooming pink one. No reply. Ruth continued, "My mama used to grow these back home. Said they bloom better when you talk to em. Crazy, huh?"
Ah!
She smiled to herself. Lena stared ahead. Ruth wasn't discouraged. She spoke every day. Sometimes she sang. Other times she read out loud. She didn't expect answers. She just filled the silence with kindness. One night, around midnight, Ruth heard soft crying. She peeked into Lena's room and saw her face wet with tears, her head slightly turned toward the window. Ruth stepped in quietly, knelt beside her, and whispered, "You're still in there, baby. I can feel it, and I'll help you, I swear." The next morning, Lena asked a question. "Why do you talk to me so much?" It was the first time anyone besides a nurse or doctor had heard her voice in weeks. Ruth didn't show surprise. She simply replied, "Because I see you. Ain't gone, and I won't pretend like you are." Lena blinked fast. She was trying not to cry again. Something changed after that. Not suddenly, but like a long, slow thaw after a hard winter. Ruth started bringing in books. Not medical ones, but novels, stories about adventures, friendships, even silly romantic ones Lena used to love. She played music Lena once enjoyed. At first it was low, barely audible, then louder. She even placed a small mirror near the windowsill, not directly in Lena's view, but where she could choose to see herself if she wanted to. "I'm ugly now," Lena said one afternoon. "You're heartbroken," Ruth corrected gently. "But you ain't ugly. You're still you. Ruth told Lena stories from her life. She talked about being raised by her grandmother, working 2 jobs while raising her own daughter, and how she used to sing in her church choir. Her stories were raw, sometimes funny, sometimes painful, but always real. And slowly, Lena started sharing her own. She spoke of how she used to sneak into her mother's closet and try on heels, how she loved painting landscapes from the upstairs balcony, how she once dreamed of starting a non-profit for disabled children. Weeks passed, then months. Ruth began helping with physical therapy, encouraging Lena to use her voice more. With the help of an advanced voice-activated communication system and physical exercises for her neck and shoulder muscles, Lena began to feel some control again. Charles Whitmore noticed the change. He started spending more time at home. He watched as Ruth helped his daughter laugh again, however softly. One evening, he found Lena and Ruth watching a comedy film, both laughing so hard tears rolled down their cheeks. "Thank you," he whispered. To Ruth after Lena had gone to sleep, Ruth shook her head. "She's the one fighting. I'm just walking with her." One day, Ruth brought in paints and brushes. "I don't want to," Lena said. "I know. But what if we just try? Just once." She helped attach a brush to a device that Lena could control with her mouth and slight head movements. It was awkward at first, but Lena tried, and tried again. By the end of the week, she had painted her first abstract piece, full of color and movement. When her father saw it, he cried. More than a year after Ruth first arrived, Lena held her first online art exhibition called Still Me. It featured 10 of her paintings and raised over $500,000 for spinal injury. Research and support groups for young disabled women. She gave a virtual speech using her voice device. The audience was silent as they listened. "I lost everything I thought made me me. But then someone whispered, 'I'll help you.' That voice reminded me I hadn't lost my soul. I just needed someone to believe it was still there." Asked in an interview who that person was, Lena smiled and said, "Her name is Ruth Daniels. She was hired as a maid, but to me, she became my lighthouse." After the exhibition, Charles Whitmore offered Ruth anything she wanted: a house, a permanent salary, a foundation in her name. Ruth chose something simpler. "I just want to stay," she said, "until she don't need me no more." To this day, she still lives at the mansion, not as a maid, but as part of the family. Lena, now in her 20s, has become a speaker, artist, and disability rights advocate. Her art has traveled to New York, London, and Tokyo. She's written a book titled Colors of Stillness. The first page reads, "To the woman who whispered hope into a broken girl's silence. Thank you for showing me I still had a voice." And in the grand Whitmore mansion, a painting hangs in the entrance hall. It shows 2 women sitting in a sunlit garden, one in a wheelchair, the other kneeling beside her, holding her hand. There are no words, just color, just light. But everyone who sees it feels the whisper, "I'll help her."